I realized I haven't done a whole lot with the upgrades that have been going on. Like, I've been staying up to date with them with my projects, but I know that these have been some of my more helpful videos. So I figured I'd take the time to start from where I left off in the last one, which was 3.50. So I'm going to start with 3.51 and just go through all of the updates. The features are typically where I'm going to stay and talk about those. There may be a couple of bug fixes we look into as well, but then show actual code of it working. The Payload team has done a great job of including code examples in their newest releases. So that's helpful, and it's going to be a way for me to also implement it into this blank project that I have set up already. It's been a while since I have looked at the upgrades like line by line. So if you haven't already, I do have my Next in Dev newsletter that covers all of the key features from every payload upgrade. So make sure you subscribe to that if you don't want to wait 14 or 15 versions before a video comes out. But we'll have some code examples, we'll see what this looks like, and I'm going to actually downgrade the project that I just created all the way down to 3.51 and do it incrementally. There are going to be a couple of ways that you can upgrade though, so why don't we take a look at some code. On the right, there is just a blank template that I created using the create-payload-app script. So I'm going to go into the package.json file, and everywhere it says 3.64, I'm going to select all and then replace all. So 3.51.0, and then replace all of that. And now I can run pnpm I, which will install, and we see the installation there. I haven't run the code yet, so we don't see a cache folder or a next folder. So here, we're not going to run into any conflicts if I try to run the code. So I'm just going to go ahead and run pnpm dev just so we can see it spin up without any errors. And I suppose we should create our first user as well, just in case there's something in the payload UI that we want to look at. So I'll go to the admin panel, use my typical test email and password. Very secure. Don't need to save it because I think I have that memorized. So let's start 3.51. Not a whole lot happened in this one. So we do see that we have the plugin multi-tenant, which allows the tenant field overrides. So looking inside of the merged feature, we can see what this actually does. And so the internationalization portion has been improved and the tenant selector label has been deprecated. And that's really all this does, but it allows for, or it changes how the field override works. We can see the tenant field overrides happen within the collections level of the multi-tenant plugin, and it's typed appropriately, and then the internationalization improvements as well. So beyond that, there's the update query presets UX. If I click into that, so it doesn't seem like there's going to be any code for me to do here, but we can see the query preset controls are more prominent now. So that's something we should be able to see if we create a preset ourselves. So first we'll go to users, collection, users, enable query presets. We set that to true. And now that I have this set to true in my users collection, I can see the select preset pop up here. If we go back a version, just so we can look at it here live, I'll select all these and reduce it to 3.5 instead, and then run pnpm I. I'm going to try this without having to delete my next folder. So I'll restart the dev server. We see that the preset is down here now, and I don't have any presets, but I can create new ones here. But the UX just looks much better when it's more prominent like it is in 3.51. As soon as it refreshes, yep, we can see that it moved from down here to up here, and that plus button helps you create a preset much more easily than it was when it was down here. So that's really it for 3.51. We'll move up to 0.52. There's not a lot of features for 3.52, and this plugin import-export is the only feature in this 3.52. So you can add limit and page fields to export options, not really much to write home about there. And so we're going to skip 3.52 and head up to 3.53, which has a couple of features. The first is that there is an Icelandic translation now. We need to go to package.json, and we're going to upgrade from 3.51 to 3.53, and we're going to install all of that. So we can import from our Payload CMS, translations, languages. I need to install this first. We'll do pnpm add Payload CMS translations. We can install that and then take a look at our releases and see what Icelandic is. And so I can't see it here in the conversation, but if I go to commits, I should be able to see how it's exported, which is IS. So now if I do IS, and then add IS here, we'll be able to add, under admin, our internationalization object. Before we do this, add English, because what's going to happen is I won't be able to understand what the panel is going to be turned into. So we'll do supported languages, and we should just be able to do English and then Icelandic, which gives me a type error, which means I did something wrong. So I'll just do pnpm dev, go back to the user panel, refresh. And then if I go to my preferences, I should be able to switch the language from English to Icelandic. And I can see that everything is updated here. Now, I'll need to switch this back to English because I don't read or speak Icelandic. If you do end up seeing this type error, you can suppress with ts-ignore. There we go. So that's the Icelandic translation. Then there is another plugin, import export, where you can now group by and sort by when those are present in your collections and your sort is unset. There's another one for plugin import and export, which adds sort order control in sync with sort by field. And then another multi-tenant. You can see now which tenant the document is attributed to. So we're going to go up to 3.54. And there is another way to upgrade. I should have started with this, but if you do pnpx create-payload-app, what this is going to do is it's going to search and make sure that payload is installed. It says that it's detected, so now I can upgrade payload in this project, and it's going to upgrade all of my packages for me, but it's going to go to the most recent version, which is 3.64. I'm doing this one by one just so we can see how things progress through each of these versions. Just like that type error we just saw with languages, I want to see if that gets fixed in a later version and then report on it. So I'm going to say no to updating the project and just select all 3.53, go up to 3.54. We'll replace all, come back over to the payload config. First, I have to run pnpm-i to install all of my dependencies. And then we can see that there are some new updates to the job queue tasks, which now run them in parallel. You can configure your toast notifications now, which is exciting. So here in the admin, you can change now the toast duration. So the default appears to be 8,000. So if I do 10,000, I assume this is milliseconds. And then you can just set like a limit to maybe 1 instead of a bunch. We should now be able to get our development server running. So here, this is kind of what I was expecting to happen eventually. I can delete next. So I'll delete that, run pnpm dev again. There we go. So now if I go to my user, I can create a new one and we'll see the toast pop up, user successfully created, and that's going to stay up there for 10 seconds instead of 8 seconds like it was before. And only one will be created at a time. Let's see if I can delete and then create a second toast. Took the place of the first toast. I don't need a new user, so I can delete that. So that's the toast. You can now also have multiple different payload instances using get payload in the same process. So we'll want to take a look at this and see what this actually means. So we'll let that load up. So with how payload is created, or how the instance of payload is initialized, is you get your payload instance and then it caches that instance. That means that if you later on change the arguments that you have for payload, that same payload is still from that initial initialization. So here that's now fixed. You can have multiple different payload instances. So here it's just an order of operations thing. So if you only have the one instance of payload and it does not include cron equals true, then you go to your payload admin panel. The cron jobs that you have set up won't work, even if you end up going to a part of the admin panel that does have cron set to true. So that breaks auto run, and you're not able to have them running just depending on which way you enter your site. So this fixes that issue. You now have the key property to get payload, similar to how all React objects in a loop or a map need a key in order for them to be unique. That's the same thought here as well. So that is a new fix where you can now use multiple get payload instances in the same process with different configurations. There's now atomic array push database updates. This adds the push support for array fields for all databases. So again, for job queues, it enables tasks in parallel. All good things coming from this, but it does change the updated at behavior, which no longer needs to be only set to the current date. But that doesn't mean that you can skip updated at property completely. So you still have to have a way to update the updated at field regardless. And then here are some examples of how to push items. So I'll move on. Multi-tenant, you can now allow custom tenant field per collection. So specifically, whatever you want for one tenant that you just want in one collection, you can now do that. And you also get the global selector back in all views. All right, that's it for 3.54. Let's jump up to 3.55. And I'm going to go straight up to 55.1 because that's the patch, but all the features are here in 3.55. So let's go ahead and change this to 3.54, this to 3.55. Now I can run PMPMI. So up to 3.55, I actually need to upgrade this to 3.55.1. So let's move this up real quick. Now replace all, run PNPMI, then dev. I'm going to skip ahead to this admin auto refresh. So I'm going to add that real quick. And what auto refresh does when set to true is it makes sure that as long as you are working and active, it keeps your session active. This removes the need for that "are you still logged in" modal, which I believe still pops up, but it's not nearly as frequent. And as long as I keep this active and I'm doing stuff, it'll automatically refresh my session for me. So save collection folder tab preferences. So if you set preferences in the folder tab, those are now saved. They were not saved before this version 3.55. I'm going to take some time to set up a block real quick. I can just go to the users and add a new field. So I can do type, rich text, name, lexical. So now we'll have our editor, which will be lexical editor, which needs to be imported from rich text lexical. Then we need our features, which really all I want is our block feature. I'll add blocks feature there, which this blocks feature will now have blocks, which will have this array here. Now I can paste that there, format, save. I'm going to have to do import map types in pnpm dev, then refresh. I can't, just like how this one can be dragged around, and add block can be added, can't be added here. When it's added globally, it doesn't really do anything. So I'm going to remove that. But when it's added locally, we can no longer see the handle or the plus button there, but I can still add a block here as well. There are a couple of rich text lexical upgrades, a new live preview, client-side live preview, which simplifies population and supports hooks and lexical block population. Before, for live preview, you could just keep adding things to your blocks array and it would show up, but it would not show up for something nested like blocks in a lexical field. So now that's supported as well. There's a localized status option, which I actually didn't see this. So it's experimental, which means it's in beta, which means that you should not use it in production, but you should try it out. So this is essentially just localization improvements, which is great to see. So now when this is set to true, you're able to see what the document status is based on the current locale rather than the latest overall status. For example, if you have English and Spanish as your locales, and you have an English draft, and you most recently published a Spanish page, that Spanish page is going to be seen instead of that English draft, even if you are in English. So now with 3.55.1 and the experimental localized status option, you're able to see whatever the document status is for that locale rather than based on just whatever the most recent update is. So that's it for that one. There's this unauthenticated client config. So this is not something that you opt into. It's a performance and security update where now the client config is behind authentication. So that's good news since it prevents exposing underlying schemas. So then you can get an unauthenticated version of the client config in its place. So only the minimally required properties to log in will exist. When you have multiple image sizes, things can get cluttered in your admin UI. So you're now able to disable the list column and filter admin properties on image size, so it doesn't just blow up your admin panel. Condition data attribute was missing the document ID when the document is being edited. So now the ID is passed in to the data. So now you can use the ID in the logic that you use for your admin condition. So good improvement there for conditionals. So let's move on to 3.56.0. Let's go to package.json, take 3.55.1 and replace it, 356.0, replace all. So I'll do first pnpmi, then I'll generate the import map types and then the dev. So now we can pass args to task on success and on fail callbacks. So if we go to our payload config and we add our jobs queue, we'll do tasks. We need a slug that will just be test task. And now we have on fail, which now takes args, and then on success, which also takes args. And then of course we need the handler, which doesn't really necessarily take args. So I'll just return an output test because that's what it needs to be satisfied. So now we can see that the input job request, which has the payload object in it, and task status are passed to on fail and on success. These arguments are now available to you. So we get input, we get job, we get rec, which, like I said, has payload, and then we have task status. All of that's included in the on fail and on success args. Beyond that, there's now a more reliable job system for crons. This seems to be a very job-heavy update. Now you have a way to just handle schedules instead of running the job. So you hit this bin script and it will hit all of your jobs and schedule them up instead of just running them automatically. And so in order to use it, you use the normal cron template here to schedule using the scheduling bin script. Now you're able to change the field size and the limit of what your body parser can take care of, because by default, anything bigger than 1 megabyte throws an error. Some of us like to upload images greater than 1 megabyte, so this now allows that. So there's now a global before operation hook. I do like the before operation hook I've used it for collections where I'm able to essentially just change the logic depending on what operation we're going through. So it's nice to have this globally as well. And I say globally, I mean that for global collections, but you know what I'm trying to say. So nice addition there. And then export field path context. A while back, they removed the direct passing of a path prop to a custom field component. It seems like this is a stopgap though. I wouldn't rely on this too much for a long-term fix if you're looking for one. I'll move on to 3.57. We can install everything, generate types, import map, and then start up dev. All right, so format doc URL function. So you can disable automatic link creation and then create custom URLs based on the document data. So you just get more control over your collection item. We'll just do a page.ts. We'll import our collection config from payload. Then I can export constant called page. Should just be page. Now I need a slug, which will be pages. We'll do fields just one field. We'll do type of text, name text. Now we need to, not in fields, maybe it's not here, admin maybe, format doc URL. This is going to be a function. So we can do the collection slug. We can get the doc, and I don't really want the request, but you do have the request and the view type as well. And then here, I imagine we'll need to return a string or null. So I think I can just do something like collection slug doc dot text, hit save. Now if I go to my admin panel, I'm gonna have to generate types here in a second. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my next cache. So I'm just going to do import map types and npm dev. I need to register the pages collection. So let's go to our collections, add pages, or is it just page? Yep, just page. Refresh, pages shows up. Create a new page, and I just add text. So I get pages undefined as the actual URL there. So that's not quite what I need. So the reason that didn't work is I had capitalized T for text, but now, so let's go ahead and edit the text here, then save that. Now I can see down there in the bottom that pages text is the slug. Let's go ahead and try and create a new one, shall we? So we'll do test, hit save. And so I still see the ID here, but I do see that this is all updated with the pages/test that I have set up. So the real power in this is that you get to redirect to other pages rather than changing the default behavior of how payload operates. So if I change this back to ID, we'll see that we can access our documents here. But if I added something like type of checkbox, name featured, we could do something like, here we should actually do something like default URL, and then this will be the default case, so we'll do default URL there, but we'll check if doc featured, and if it is featured, we can return, just as an example, please don't do this, a new path. I can save that, select featured here. When I save, we'll see that this changes to a new path, but of course it's useless. There's nothing there with my request. So this is more or less just a way for you to control how document URLs are created. I'm just going to leave this as the default because I don't have anything different to point my example website to. So then there's conditional blocks. So here we'll say, we'll leave this checkbox as featured. And now we can add a new blocks field that's just going to be called test blocks. It's going to be type of, not blur, that's for sure, type of blocks. And we'll have some blocks. And these blocks will have just, I'm going to copy a lot of this example. So we'll have one block that will be slug of block 1, and then we'll have fields, which will have a type of text and a name of block 1 text. And we're going to simplify this for me to copy and paste because it's really not that much text here. That's too much. Then we'll do another block and set this to be block 2 and block 2 text. And we now have this filter options option here. So I can do filter options, which takes a function. And I'm just going to take our, I should just be able to use data here. So first we'll get the status of our featured checkbox. So I'll just set featured, set that equal to data featured. We can do error handling here. I'm just doing an upgrade guide. This is not that intense. So we can return based on if there's featured, we'll return the data featured. Otherwise, we'll just include true. We'll go to our page. We'll check our test block. I don't see it available here, but if I unmark featured, I see the blocks available now as well. So another way that I can use this is the user. I can check if user.email is equal to the email that I'm logged into now. I can just return true. And since that can be undefined, I need to use optional chaining. But now, even with featured checked, I, as the person using this email address, can access all of the blocks. And so this is a powerful way to restrict who and how you can use blocks. Virtual fields now have the has many option. When you save, the live preview URL is regenerated. So that was an issue with whenever you would update your title or whatever changed your slug. Now that whole URL, whenever you save, it is updated for you. With the form builder, you can now create form submissions from the admin panel. This allows you to manually create form submissions when needed. There's now an improved tenant assignment flow. Let's take a look at that. Really, this is just an overall improvement to how documents are assigned to tenants. So I'm going to move on from that. You can now copy and paste and drag and drop file and images into the editor. And what I can do now is something like if I just take a screenshot of that, I can copy it and then I should be able to paste it. Well, that didn't work. Let me try dragging and dropping. I think I need to have features, the upload feature. That would make sense. Let me regenerate my types, refresh, try it again. There we go. So now I just had to enable the upload feature and now I should be able to take a screenshot, copy it, and then paste it. There we go. And then I'm able to set an alt description and all of that. So there we go. Now it's there. Perfect. So that works great. And then I can see that my media folder got created and my image is there because I'm using local storage right now. There's work being done to have the lexical field rendered on demand and some Tamil, I assume, translations. So I'm going to add that translation just like I did with Icelandic, which I imagine is TA, which is the error that I was getting. So I'm going to import TA from our languages here. Can I get rid of this? And then yes. So now our types are satisfied. Don't know why I was getting the Tamil translation lumped in there. Go to my user and then go to preferences. I can see this no translation in here as well. So got a couple of translation options now. Oh, this was a big one. This is a huge one. So I'm not going to be able to actually cover a lot of this, but I'll still upgrade to 3.57.0 to 3.58.0. We'll replace all. We'll run pnpmi. We'll delete next and then generate everything. So what this one introduced was the e-commerce plugin and template, huge news. The SDK package, huge news. And then of course the Cloudflare support, which is also huge news. So these are not just things that I can, just spin up real quick here and there, but I do have plans to do a similar live stream as this one to do the new Cloudflare D1 support and do the template. Beyond just one click, I want to actually start a project and get it up and running on Cloudflare workers. I have a feeling that one is going to cost me some money. So we'll see if I'm able to do it on the free plan. I'll make it work, maybe. The SDK, I have some plans here as well for different front ends. So I'm really excited to jump into this one because I've been wanting to try out Astro for a while. And I think this is going to help me make that jump a lot more easily with Payload CMS. And then the e-commerce plugin and template. There's a lot of talk and chatter in the Discord about this one, still in development. So I'm not sure I'm ready to jump into this. It is in beta, but I think it's the fastest moving beta. Not in that it's going to finish quickly, just that there are changes almost every week, I think. But this was a huge update. I can't believe they launched all of this in just one update. So looking forward to jumping more into this one, but I do have to skip 3.58 because I can't just let me spin up the SDK real quick because that's just not going to happen. So let's install 3.59, remove next. Oh, the slug field. I really like this field. So it took me a second to understand what it was though. So here we can import the slug field from payload. So now that'll pop up, and then I can use the field to use as, oh, this is media. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to remove this and come over to our page, enter slug field, and bring this over. So when you import the slug field, you do need to generate your import map. So you can see here, like the past couple of times it said that it skipped generating the import map, but since I'm using the slug field, which is technically a custom field with a custom component, you need to generate an import map for it to work correctly. So pages, I can click in, and I've got the slug here, and it's using the text field to generate. So if I hit save, the slug field generates there. I don't necessarily have to save to do that. I can unlock it and generate. So if I change this to testing, I could generate the slug and then hit save. So this saves some time. I know every time I get into a project, I always have to create a slugify function. I have to use it in the after change hook. This just takes care of all of it for me. And it's a little bit more robust than anything that I would create just on the fly. So enjoy the slug field. There are some other options you can use in it. You can choose yes or no if it's required. You can override certain parts of the field. So if you wanted to set a custom label, I won't do the required because required, like that's just default CMS Payload 101. We don't have to go over that. So the position doesn't do anything, which is interesting and a bit disappointing, but I would normally put it in the sidebar anyway. Overrides, so we can try their overrides example, which is the field, then field, fields one, label, custom, and then return field. So we get a type error, but I'm going to try it anyway. Yeah, so that works, at least for this slugify function. And most slugify functions I found, it mostly sanitizes everything down to the English characters. Anything that looks like a Latin character but has additional embellishments are likely going to be sanitized. So that is true for the slug field. Then the checkbox name is the generate slug. So I could just say generate. And then I already used field to use. You can change the name for the slug field, which I'm going to leave. No, I'll change it. Name of slug field is going to be slug field. And that's all the options there. So I see slug field show up there. Then we can unlock and then hit generate, hit save. All good there. But now I can just get rid of this. It'll change back to slug, but that stays the same. So cool. Slug field is awesome, saves some time, but yes, does have its limitation for anything that's not a, I'm going to use air quotes here, traditional English character. So choose wisely if you're going to use this field for your project. Any depth for relationships in find distinct. So find distinct is used for pulling out all of the unique titles for a collection, for example. And now you can use this dot notation to pull out any depth for the relationship as long as that depth is accessible for you. So if you have a depth of 0, for example, this wouldn't work. You can disable the group by option. So at the field level, you can remove the group by. So in text, I can do our disable group by, and I can set that to true. So now I won't be able to group by the text field. So now if I go into my pages, the group by option is now available, but I'm not able to select my text field. If I remove this, text shows up. So use that as you need it. Allow find distinct on fields nested to relationships and on virtual fields. So this probably enabled that first option we looked at. Bundle types. All of the payload types within the payload packages is now in a single place. With all of them bundled together like this, you're able to see text highlighting for your payload files as well. And so that shows up here. Now it's able to understand when you're using payload and even have text completion through all of the different types and configs. So that's great. The new Cloudflare template was added to the create-payload-app. We talked about that in the last version. Read replicas in D1 is now supported, and that was a feature that actually came out with Postgres earlier. This helps with read-heavy operations performance boost. So similar to the push operation, atomic array operation that we saw, you now also have append and remove. It's just a couple of more new array operations that we have talked about. Okay, so there's just a new view export that allows you to have a little bit more flexibility in which views you use. So I have a video out on how to set up plausible analytics in your admin UI. I use just the default template there. This probably would have been a little bit more helpful where I could just pick and choose different parts of the view that I wanted instead of having the whole view. Either way, whether the dashboard view, which is brand new here, or the default view, you have plenty of options. There's also a simplified view or a really stripped back version of the template, which is similar to what you see on the payload login screen. Disable join field row types and live preview conditions. So the row types, there's literally just a column of type. So you don't necessarily need this if they're all posts, so that makes sense. And then without row types, so it looks just the same without the type there. So this comes in handy if you have polymorphic joins where you have maybe one item goes to multiple collections. You can see what the type actually is. And so sometimes you don't have that. You can just remove it and not have row types there. All right. Lastly, live preview with conditions. It's access control for your live preview. So if you don't want certain users to be able to preview something live, you can just set up a ternary operation like you see here, where you end up either sending somebody to a null page or the home page or just any other page rather than the live preview page that you have set up. That's everything from version 3.51 to 3.60. So that's 10 versions that we went over. I hope this was helpful where you saw each individual upgrade and the different things that you can do in each version. And I hope you're also able to see how much work goes into each of these upgrades as well, not just for me to outline them, but to those who are creating them. Thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you subscribe, like this video. All of that stuff helps me get the word out for my content. So subscribe to my newsletter, Next in Dev. You can support me on Patreon or become a member on my YouTube channel. Anything helps to help me create content like this, which I know helps a lot of people. So really excited to jump in again with the next video for upgrade guide, which would be from 3.60 all the way up to whatever is released this week.